right off the bat, I basically want to say yes, they can be. The question of if they are or aren't is not actually in and of itself a very fascinating question, but the asking of the question reveals interesting aspects of how religions are formed, the place they hold in society, and most importantly, how we study them. To get definitional nuance out of the way so we can look at two case studies, I personally tend towards a more broad, functionalist definition of what religion is, meaning I like to look more at what religion does than what religion is. These definitions, of which there are plenty, often consider multiple aspects of religion, and the more aspects that are ticked off, the more something looks like a religion. I like Ninian Smart's approach. His 7 dimensions of religion, ritual, myth, experience, community, ethics, doctrine, and material culture, let us compare Christianity, Shinto, Marxism, and even a Harry Potter fandom without pretending they're identical. That being said, I don't want to emphasize any particular definition system, because as we will see later, religions are complicated. They are living, breathing, unpredictable, and ever-changing. And just when you think you've got a clear definition, some niche religion comes along and provides an exception to your rule. Fan communities are not really all that different. A statement made by a fan in Dr. Henry Jenkins' paper on the topic stated, "What I love about fandom is the freedom we have allowed ourselves to create and recreate our characters over and over again. Fanfic rarely sits still. It's like a living, evolving thing, taking on its own life, one story building on another, each writer's reality bouncing off another's, and maybe even melding together to form a whole new creation." Jenkins identifies fan communities, or fandoms, as modern participatory cultures, where fans don't just consume media, they actively create, remix, and expand it. Corporations encourage this with sprawling media universes that keep fans invested over years. And online spaces amplify this by providing virtual communities where people form deep social ties through shared stories. One such community is the Snapeists, a niche group of women active online in the late 2000s and early 2010s who literally worshipped the calculating Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher Severus Snape from the Harry Potter series. These women would commune with Snape on the astral plane, believing him to be a very real spiritual force whose powers allow him to pervade the lives of the Snapeists and alter their patterns of behavior. They would have wedding ceremonies to him, call him their lord and master, perform rituals for him like lighting candles on specific days, and sometimes erotic things. Another group we can look at is the UK Tolkien Society, who each year perform the Enyalaya. I hope I said that right. The elven ritual of remembrance at Tolkien's grave at Oxford. They gather in cosplay and robes, solemnly making their way to the gravestone, where there is a reading of the climactic end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I feel like spring after winter, and sun on the leaves, and like trumpets and harps and all the songs I have ever heard. Contemplative silence and tears are shared while they lay wreaths around the gravestone, and a single, unaccompanied voice rises in song, Namarie, Galadriel's hymn of parting to the Fellowship of the Ring and Lothlorien. If we look at the Snapeists and the Tolkien Society, we can see that their beliefs and practices denote many of the features in Smart's 7 dimensions: ritual practice, sacred texts, material objects, powerful emotional experience, and even doctrine guiding action. Tolkien himself was aware of the potentially religious devotion his fans had before he passed, infamously dubbing them his deplorable cultists. Sociologists actually have a term for these groups: hyper-real religions. Adam Possamai describes these groups as innovative spiritualities, mixing popular culture with traditional religious elements and often flourishing online. So they're syncretic, blending old and new symbols into something unique. The Snapeists, for example, resemble medieval mystics who claimed ecstatic experiences of divine love, or 19th century spiritualists who communed with spirits. The main difference is cultural legitimacy. While the medieval church recognized certain women as saints, fan-based spiritualities rarely receive that kind of institutional approval. But here's the catch. Just because something walks and talks like a religion doesn't necessarily mean that society will accept it as one. Intellectual property law, for instance, creates a barrier. Jenkins points out that while myth-making used to be a collective process, the rise of copyright has locked down stories into official versions. He states, "Our emotional and social investments in culture have not shifted, but new structures of ownership diminish our ability to participate in the creation and interpretation of that culture." So fans can pour devotion into a character, but corporations own the narrative. I mean, imagine if Jesus had been copyrighted. Would Christianity have splintered into so many different forms? Would Mormonism or Islam even exist? Even with these parallels, Jenkins himself resists calling fandoms religions. He argues that they lack the exclusive ethical obligations and transcendent claims of traditional faiths. This highlights the bigger issue. It often comes down to the definitions that the scholars choose. Narrow, substantive definitions focus on institutions, doctrines, and claims about the supernatural. Broader functionalist ones, like the ones I follow, emphasize what religion does for people, meaning fandom often qualifies. And this is the core issue. We as scholars have a responsibility to openness, humility, and awareness when it comes to discussing these new and modern forms of religion. As scholar Jonathan Z. Smith notes, religion is not a native term. It is a term created by scholars for their intellectual purposes and therefore is theirs to define. It is a second-order generic concept that plays the same role in establishing a disciplinary horizon that a concept such as language plays in linguistics or culture plays in anthropology. In other words, the boundaries are ours to draw. And this matters because here in Australia, religions based on popular culture are officially invisible. The census lumps them into the inadequately described religions category and the not stated section of the data. That erases real communities of practice and devotion, and recognizing them gives us a fuller and truer picture of religious life in Australia today. So yes, fandoms can become religions. They already have. They might run into a few copyright lawyers rather than inquisitors, but what they're doing is part of a long-standing human tradition, blending myth and popular culture to find meaning, communities, and love. We as scholars get the privilege of studying it, learning from them, and sharing their stories. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you learned something. This was a lot of fun to research. I never thought I would have come across something like the Snapeists in my uni degree, and yet here we are. I've also never really done something like this before. I wish you could see the trouble I put into getting this set up. It was a lot of effort to figure out how to make this look any good and make this look any good, but I think we got there in the end. I really, really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope I see you again for the next one. Bye!